are here. Justin's here. He's got a new computer dealing with some technical issues. Hopefully, the internets and the computers will give us a wonderful broadcast tonight. That is what we are hoping for. I'm waiting for the little cue from the chat room to let me know that it's all. Oh, there it is. Thanks, Identity 4. We're ready to start. Are you ready to start? I'm ready to start this countdown. In 3, 2. This is TWIS, This Week in Science, episode number 751, recorded on Wednesday, December 18th, 2019. It's the top 11 of 2019. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your head with a countdown. But first,
disclaimer. 'Twas the night before Twistmas when all through the house researchers were stirring, some with a mouse. The stories were gathered by the broadcast with care in the hopes that the listeners soon would be there. The Patreons were nestled all snug in their beds while visions of supernova danced in their heads. And Blair with her corner and Kiki with brains had just listened to Justin's Christmas disclaims. When out on the interwebs there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the chat room to see just what was the matter. Away to the websites I flew like a flash, clicked open search browsers and threw up some hashtags. When, what to my wondering eyes should appear but a top 11 stories show, the best of the year, on This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to Kiki and Blair.
and a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. But wait, it is not just another episode. Not like all the other episodes. Is it, Kai?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not, Kai's.
It's the Christmas. It's the countdown.
It's the countdown. Oh, I've got it.
I don't remember any of the last countdowns. I might have not been here for them.
You.
But I'm super excited. This is my first countdown.
Woo! Kai's excited. Oh, he's excited. He's
I want to
got.
listen to this.
You want?
I need to hear everything.
Well, you're going to have to go to bed at some point. Dance with those sugar plum visions of science in your head. We are excited here.
Before Christmas.
'Twas the night before Twistmas, and
Christmas.
we are counting down the top 11 stories of 2019. Yeah, we have news, but it's all old news from the year past. But in this, Justin, why is it that we count down the top 11 again?
Well, there is at the end of every year, there's a top 10 lists of top 10 things that happened in the year on some sort of box and category and subject matter. And they always do 10, and then you always have to be, you're left wondering, what was the thing right on the cusp that almost made it but didn't? And we don't want you to wonder, so this one goes up to 11.
This one, the TWIS countdown, it always goes to 11. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready for this? Are we really ready?
ready.
Yeah, Blair, you ready?
We're not, but we're going to do
yeah.
it anyway.
No, when I was looking through these stories in preparation, there were some things that were so amazing that happened this year. It feels like it happened super long ago because it just changed the way we think about things so fundamentally. So I can't wait to talk about those things in particular.
Yeah. Yes. I'm
Yeah, and
very
the thing
excited
that always
about it.
occurs to me whenever we've done this show is how long a year is.
Yes, 100%. When I was looking at some of them,
Yeah.
even as recent as June or July, I was thinking, that was this year?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that wasn't years ago. Oh no, that was
No.
just months ago. Sometimes it seems like science plods along, and other times it just races ahead like a rabbit. That's for sure. And we're getting ready for the new year. So let's start counting it down. But first, we got to jump. Before we jump into the show, I would like to remind everyone that if you have not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can do so. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook. You can also find us all places that podcasts are found. Yes, you can. Or you can just visit TWIS.org. At
We're
twist.
also right.
Yeah, twist.org. You can also find the 2020 Blair's Animal Corner TWIS calendar. You can order it there. Oh, yes. Kai was going to bring it up and show it off. You're going to put it over here. Oh, Blair's got one
Oh,
too.
Blair also has it.
I'm ready.
Yes. There are
Twist
only
2020.
about 30 left.
Limited supply.
Limited supply.
Limited edition.
Get yours now. Also, if you are in the San Francisco Bay Area in the month of January, put the SF Sketch Fest Cal Academy Nightlife on January 16th on your calendar. We're going to be there doing a live show at the Sketch Fest. We've done it a couple of times before and are so excited about making a return appearance, and we hope that we get to see you there at Cal Academy on
And I
January
do believe
16th.
all tickets for Sketchfest are currently on sale, so you should be able to grab those tickets anytime now.
Anytime, anytime. All right, now the business is done. It's time to count it down. And we're going to start at number...
1,
No.
11.
Now you say it's a countdown,
It's
not a count up.
countdown, not a count up.
11.
11. Justin, what is it, number 11?
The evolution of, and this may be near and dear to most of our listeners, the evolution of life, the origin of life, even.
Oh, yeah, life. That's kind of
Mhm.
important to me.
Yeah. So, big year for finding out that everything that we know about the origin of life isn't necessarily a complete picture, or wasn't before, because we're getting more hints, we're getting more clues onto how that primordial soup may have first been comprised. So we had the fatty acid membranes that we found that were being stabilized by amino acids,
Yeah.
and then forming membranes. This is not how we thought this thing started, or this wasn't the prevailing theory of the what could have began life in the early oceans. So got some new insights into the chemistry.
And membranes, they're essential for life. So the ability to, it was a big question before that study came out. And, people are still, of course, going to be looking into it further, but it's been a huge question how membranes could have really come to be stabilized.
Yeah. And remember, I remember there was the hydrothermal vents in the clay, right? So you get these bubbles that start to appear in this very porous clay then. And then anything that's having chemical reactions within these little pores may be starting to form a membrane on the edges, because that's the boundary that's already sort of artificially preserving it in this space. But yeah, there was a finding that no, actually, there's a very natural way that could happen without having that sort of simulated or confined space to force a membrane.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely changes what the origin of life itself may have been.
Chemistry.
And then this is one I don't remember the other story we've got tagged in here, the ancestor cells. I was missing from this. I do not remember this story.
You had
This is
twist highway
definitely
hypnosis for that one?
Well, yeah, this is suggesting that it wasn't necessarily a progression from just as single-celled organisms to multicellular organisms, but from that multi-celled organisms may have started from stem cells?
Yes, so not
that's totally
exactly.
going to change how we talk about the origin of multicellular organisms, if that's
Yeah.
the case.
And it wasn't just stem cells. It was from a cell that was somewhat similar in its characteristics to a stem cell, in that it could become, it was pluripotent in a sense, in that it had this ability, this progenitor cell had this ability to become other cell types or to match well with other cell types. There are certain characteristics of stem cells that they think would have been necessary for multicellular life to actually take place, to actually go from that big jump between little single cells living together to more multicellular organism. It's a big question. We'll see. Still to play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason this makes the list is kind of what I was just talking about, that we have a good idea about how life started, we think. But as we kind of clear up the picture, things are bound to be slightly different than what we anticipate. And I think these are a couple of items that are really clearing up how things have happened. And I think it's exciting because there's always a little bit of question marks in that conversation, and the more we know, the better we can kind of explain it to people who don't have a super intensive understanding of the science behind it, which I think is part of the difficulty when you talk about the origin of life, is that you're talking to a high school student or someone without any scientific knowledge, and you're trying to explain how we know what we know. The more we know, the easier that conversation is had.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It isn't just the old story of, a few ingredients in a glass jar and mix them together and voila, there was life. Now there's a little bit more nuance and understanding to the steps that maybe took place, which is very thrilling. Yeah. Moving on to number 10.
10.
Yeah, that's brain organoids.
Kiki, what's an organoid?
An organoid is a big, well, not big, I mean, on the cellular scale, it's a ball of cells, a big ball of cells. Not huge, but, ballish, cellular, happy cells that live together multicellularly in a dish. Researchers use organoids to study developmental processes, to try and figure out how different organ systems maybe develop without having to actually work on developing organisms. So if you can see the steps that the cells go through, the genes that get activated, that you can get a better idea of how development really takes place. And this last year, there were some really interesting organoid studies that involved human blood vessels, where they finally were able to create organoids that have more, or the most cell types that would be part of creating real blood vessels at some point. And they were able to use these organoids to start looking at vascular diseases and other things, and potentially lead to new treatments. But the most interesting organoid studies that I saw this year had to do with human brain cells. So they used stem cells to create brain cells, and then they put human brain cell organoids into mouse brains, and then they connected together, and they enabled mouse spinal cord neurons to activate and for muscles to contract, and the system contracted. It did its thing. There was another study where they let human brain organoids develop for a long period of time, and the organoids started rhythmic electrical oscillations. The neurons acted like neurons. They connected to each other. They wired up. They started having brain type activity. And so this is really suggesting that we're on the right track for a lot of research that's going to be taking place in the next few years to figure out about diseases related to brain development, things that happen before kids are born that are genetically related, that, like I said, hopefully can lead to treatments. I think one of the there's the caveat, though, however, that not all of them, they're not as similar to real brains as we want them to be. And in fact, because they're not in living organisms and they're in these petri dishes, that the petri dish environments are kind of stressful for these little brain balls. And that, yeah, so they're not necessarily in modeling a perfect brain development system. They're modeling a stressed out developmental system potentially, which could have its own set of drawbacks.
So are they trying to say that the reason they're firing kind of like normal brains is because they're so freaked out?
No.
So it's deceptive? Or no, they're saying that it's just not a good experimental environment.
That it potentially isn't going to give as accurate results, that it's not a normal brain. It's a brain that's not connected to a body. It's a little ball of cells that it's trying to do what neurons do, but it doesn't have anything to connect to. It doesn't have anything, a body talking to it, telling it what to do. And so the ball of cells it's a little bit stressed out, and potentially it's not existing in the, most perfect cellular bathing environment, right? They've probably got they're bathing the cells in some kind of a nutrient bath, but maybe it's not optimized. Maybe it's not the best chemical cocktail, nutrient cocktail for these little brains.
Well, I like that this is kind of a nice opening and closing of a loop of saying, okay, we have these organoids that could be experimented on. They're proving kind of concept as mini brains, but let's test them as an experimental subject before we get going, which a bunch of the other stories that we talked about this year had to do with how, for example, mice were not perfect study subjects the way we were taking care of them. And so I think this is a really good example of how science has kind of recognized that we need to check out the testability and the impact of testing on a subject or an organoid or whatever it is before we get too far along in the let's test everything on these mini brains and figure out how brains work.
Right. It's the fallibility of the experimental setup. You don't have all the answers. A lot of times scientists are doing the best they can trying to figure out all the details, but you don't necessarily know all the details that are needed. And you don't know if you have created the perfect scenario in the end. So you're doing the best you can with what you have. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Thanks, Blair. Very interesting. Should we move on?
Wait.
What? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, like about the brain balls. It's about the brain balls. One thing that we could do to make it, maybe more like, I know what's going on, is that we could maybe figure out, like, how our body works more. We could study more about how our body works and figure out, like, more about the muscles and how we could actually make new organs. And then end up building organs and and basically a body for it, but then make sure that it's not conscious.
Right. You wouldn't want it to be conscious if you're doing those experiments on it. Yeah, it
would
it
you?
defeats
Or would
building
you?
a little
Because-
body for the mini brains. It defeats the purpose.
No, so I think he's right though. I agree with Guy because the thing is
just be freaking out.
and it doesn't have to be too complicated. You would need at least one form of sensory input and one form of it using that sensory input, like to twitch a muscle or to do something with it. And that sort of maybe completes the circuit of what a brain is supposed to do: take in information, process it, make a decision and an action based on that input. And so with that, it might be a little bit less little bit less chaotic. Okay. Oh, I got the light flash. Now I know. Twitch your muscle. Oh, I did
Right.
it. Now I'm going to reward myself with a little, right? Kind of
The neurons
way,
reward themselves.
Yeah, this is the sort of what that setup is designed to do. So it's right. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but and then if it becomes conscious, then we can start really having fun.
Then we have some conversations
Fun,
we
you
need to
say.
have.
Mm.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
explain our culture and what the universe is and what its existence means. Which we
Yeah, or it might just be
know.
the universe. Yeah, it's flashes of light. Give me more of them, and I will twitch
Give
more
them
muscles. I mean, it could just be very, very simple at the core. What we are here to do.
Yeah.
Twitch,
Simple at the
twitch
core, which
muscles.
is a countdown. Counted down. Let's keep counting down.
Yeah, we're just
Did
simple.
number 9.
Nine.
I like brain balls.
Number 9 is all about human evolution. And you guessed
Woo.
it, I'm going to talk about it. So basically, the long and short of it is we found out that hominids are older than we thought, that they got up to more complicated stuff than we thought, and the braided stream continues on much closer to current time than we thought. So just a couple of tidbits here. We found that Denisovans came from at least 200,000 years ago. There were stone tools that may have begun as early as 300,000 years ago. Neanderthals visited a site that we found between 200 and 100,000 years ago. So there's lots of old-timey stuff. There was another one from teeth. We found Denisovan traits in human molars discovered in China from about 160,000 years ago. The oldest human out of Africa ever just found actually 150,000 years past when we thought, around 210,000 years ago. In Mongolia, we found stone tools from about 45,000 years ago, about 10,000 years previously than we thought. The first upright apes are about 10 million years ago, much farther long ago than we thought. And so just in general, we're older than we thought. We have blended with other hominids more recently than we thought, and we got around more than we thought. So, Justin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so that's the Denisovan interaction is like 200,000 years.
Yeah.
Denisovans are much older than that. And then the timeline, I think, also was it this year? See, this is where I start to get confused on the years. Was the Neanderthals pushed back based on dental records from, I think, from about 400,000 years that they've been roaming Europe to somewhere in the neighborhood of 800,000?
Yes, 800,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what we're finding is the path of hominins, and all of the dates that we have are based on the information we have at the time. So when we get more information that shows them further back, that's when we push it back further. But yeah, Neanderthals doubled in their domination of parts of the world as their own thing. Denisovan, we need some really good Denisovan DNA to find out a little bit more about how much that braided stream with them is. But yeah,
Well, don't
that
you
was
think the
definitely-
braided stream makes it harder to identify purely Denisovan DNA?
Well, that's why we need really good Denisovan DNA.
Right.
Then there's hope for it too. I mean, because once you have that, and then you have the ancient human, you can go, aha, here's where one trait was by itself for a very long time. We now have tagged Denisovans as giving people that high altitude ability in the right. So
The Tibetan plateau, is that the
yes,
area?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we have some of these
Mongolia.
traits that we now know are associated with. And what's interesting is, and this is a recent study that we haven't done yet, but they just did a complete human genome off of basically bark sap chewing gum from 5,000 years ago.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get some more of those clues to find out how intense that braided stream is.
I'm guessing
yeah.
berry.
I love
Yeah, and
there was
what we then are talking about, right? We're talking about pockets of isolation that then come back together always over and over again. Because before Neanderthals, before Denisovans, there was already a braided stream before that. So you're right. In
This
a way,
happens with other types of animals too. This is once again a reminder that we are just animals.
I think another part of the discoveries were the use of genetics looking at the human genome and then other species and hominid species, and the discovery that there are genes in there that can't be pinpointed to any known species, and so that means that there are missing species that we have not yet found, that we haven't found their bones, we haven't found them, there are missing ancestors, and we have their genes
we may have
within
found
us.
some of the bones too, but we don't have their DNA,
We
so we
haven't
don't know if
identified
it's
it, yeah.
them. That's the crazy
Right.
thing. We might have more of the puzzle pieces than we think, and then that one more find then allows us to see the picture that we're supposed to make by fitting them together,
Right.
and then suddenly they start to.
Justin, from you usually bring these stories to the show. Is there anything, like, thinking back on this year in particular, that is like stood out to you as, was it genetics? Was it, just cool finds that were reported? Or like, is there any kind of common thread?
I was actually the high altitude trait of your Sherpa folks, for instance, or something of this nature. The fact that they have attributed that to Denisovans, and the jawbone that they found that they for the longest time didn't attribute to Denisovans. I thought it was a good year for Denisovans. But what's really incredible in all of this is that you see all of the different disciplines. You see morphology and the dental record being able to create a timeline. You're finding geologists being able to know their terrain and the formation of rocks and how old things are, telling you what layer you found something is, and dating this, where you have hard science, carbon dating type techniques. And then now you have this genetic record as well that is giving us a further and further insight. So it's all the disciplines working together, putting their one puzzle piece down and seeing how it fits with the rest that people have come to the table with over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to the next number in our countdown.
Number 8.
8.
Oh, wait. I think it's me. Hang on.
It's Justin. What are you going to talk about?
It's me. I'm number 8. Yes, it was a year of... Wait, no. What is number 8? Before I can get there on my rundown here.
Oh, your slow computer?
My
Fishy
my
fossil.
brand new computer, which is the fishy fossil one. So this was a pretty wild study. They found a lake. So there's the Jigsaw Club. It's the meteorite, asteroid, whatever it was that hit basically where the Gulf of Mexico is now.
Mm-hmm.
Wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. And I don't recall where this was. This is in Montana or North Dakota somewhere.
North Dakota.
So pretty decent, distance from the ground zero. But this particular location had a lake that got pushed out, and then the fish got covered in mud. And so we got a really good record of timeline of the event in the way that these fish were fossilized. One of the things I remember from this is that, like, after the event, you may have been pushed out of, like, all your fish may have been pushed up on shore, may have been thrown back into the lake, may have been covered with a layer of mud, might have still been surviving. And then suddenly these little glass beads started raining down at like 200 and something miles per hour, embedding moltenly into the ground, and pitted the surrounding soil as well as some of the fossils with this debris. But but they had discernible time points in this, so they could sort of back evolve the whole scenario of not only what was going on at this lake to these fish, but what was going on in our atmosphere, what the ambient temperatures were required, what the impact must have been to have created what they witnessed in the geological and fossil record together.
Yeah, that was just the whole story they were able to compile from the layers, from the various pieces of evidence that's all in this one location. I think it's one of those paleogeological finds and reports that it's a tour de force. It's a ground shaking, just perspective changing, perspective changing study. And I think on its own, without any other stories to go with it, it is its own category, its own number on our countdown because it was so amazing.
I mean, it's impossible to know exactly what happened that far ago, right? And I mean, you can understand what physics tells you based on what we think occurred and what elements are in the atmosphere and how these different kind of things going on might respond to this impact event. But to have a clear understanding of what happened in this very pivotal moment in our planet's history is super cool.
Yeah.
It is, and I'm glad I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Really
Didn't sound
glad.
like a fun time.
No.
But it was important, as are a lot of not fun things that have happened in our own personal histories. They were still pivotal and important.
Very pivotal. If you just tuned in, this is This Week in Science, and we are going to move to the next number in our countdown, which is number 7.
7.
Artificial intelligence takes up the number 7 spot on our countdown this year. Artificial intelligence was all over the place. Computers, algorithms were solving problems right and left, doing things that had never been done previously by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence convinced people it was as smart as an 8th grader. That's pretty good. It passed a test. The Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence developed an AI called Aristo it's been trying to pass the test, and it finally did. Its cognitive reasoning and natural language processing allowed it to score better than 90% on a science test geared toward 8th graders. However, they didn't have to do any written answers. It was all multiple choice. Rubik's Cube.
Their grammar is terrible. You sound like a robot.
It sounded very robotic grammar. What's going on? Rubik's Cube solved by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is being used to make fusion more efficient. Artificial intelligence is, with deep learning networks, are going to be used for protein folding and figuring out how proteins fold. Neural networks, oh boy, it developed a number sense that matches neural activity in monkeys. Basically, an artificial intelligence could count. It knew it could figure out its numbers. It got a math sense as good as monkeys. One of my favorite stories that actually was something I mentioned, but we didn't go into deeply on the show, was a hide and seek artificial intelligence. An AI was taught to play hide and seek, and based on the rules that it was given, it ended up actually breaking the game. It made up moves that nobody expected it to make, and it beat the game, and basically it broke it. The AI was smarter than the game based on the rules it had. Google's DeepMind AI beat StarCraft. It's a grandmaster in StarCraft, which is a big deal considering all of the strategy and the multiple variables that are in play in the massive multiplayer online game. And also, artificial intelligence is being used to outsmart internet censorship in countries that censor their citizens. An algorithm called Geneva outsmarted the censor tools that are in place in countries like China.
Wait, what do you mean
So-
sensory systems?
Censored.
What does that mean?
So when things are censored, is they're turned off or they're controlled by somebody bigger than you.
Kiki, we're not allowed to talk about censorship.
We're not allowed.
to children.
So I'm being censored by Justin right now.
So I recognize this was a big year for AI. And I was just thinking about how we've talked on the show a lot about AI winter and how when AI is doing really well, there's this cyclical issue. But I actually am weirdly optimistic because I feel like the average Joe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you say the words AI, they think about the Terminator, they think about a robot gone bad. But I think now the average Joe or Jane, perhaps, because of the access to the internet and understanding a little bit better what AI is and what it can be used for, I think public perception is changing. I think it's something that is more tangible now, and you can understand how you can use machine learning to search through databases and improve healthcare and all of these other things in a way that I this could be saved for the production show, perhaps. But I am optimistic about this, and I feel like this is proof this year that the more we learn about AI, in some ways, the less scary it gets, which, from me also is like a big deal.
I'm actually hearing you say this, and I was thinking, wow, Blair, this is Blair turning a corner on this topic.
Yes, I'm still scared of certain things coming from AI, like the fact that it can avoid censorship. That's kind of scary.
Or that it'll end up communicating and have talk and end up having
conversations
with you. That's just creepy. People have actually done that.
Yes,
that's just creepy.
But at the same time, I think it was 2018. AI wrote a script for a sitcom or something, and it was not good. So I can still kind of see how AI can be used for some really important things, but it's still pretty detectable. In cases where there's human on human interaction normally. And I think that's where I feel a little more comfortable, is like your Siri still half the time doesn't know what the heck you're asking it. So if it can't do that, but it can sort through millions of data points like that and find trends and help with science in a big way, I think it's changing public perception a little bit, at least from my perspective.
And to defend the AI writer, if I may, human writers have editors who go and do a lot of, and they have a group that usually gives them feedback, and they make adjustments.
Right, but I don't think those adjustments are usually, no human talks like that.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying you also need to train the AI to be the editor, to be the friend who goes, no, you can't go with that. You want to keep your job. You want to work in this industry, right? Yeah, no. So there's like a whole other bunch of AIs they needed to put with that AI to get a better script than the one that they got. Just saying, any writer's first draft on their first script, without any feedback,
throw it all out, and then you get your feedback. Exactly.
It'll be a little rough.
Everyone needs an editor.
Absolutely.
Even AI.
Yeah. That said, though, I think a lot of these stories, there is always a caveat. So the StarCraft, the DeepMind AI from Google playing StarCraft, players did start kind of figuring out which anonymous player was the AI, and they had to develop strategies to try and keep people from guessing who their AI player was. And then also, like I said, with the 8th grade testing computer, they weren't able to test on all the factors of the test because it was an AI and not a person, and so not able to do some of the testing procedures. So there's still a long way to go, and we'll figure it out. And I remember from last year, 2018, the Go playing AI, the Go champions, said that they were learning from these moves. They were moves that no human would ever make. So there was a detection of the difference by the champions. So AI, a tool, it's not taking over our world yet, but it's going to be helpful. And that takes us to the next category. Where are we on our countdown?
7.
Number 6.
Six.
Oh, we're on 6? Oh.
So I'll bring you a new kind of AI, animal intelligence. This is a particularly big year for animals, showing us that they were in fact quite smart, and in some cases close to as smart as a human. A lot of the time it comes down to the methods, right? The way that we test animals is human biased when we look at intelligence. And so once we learn how to adjust our testing methods, we find out, oh, turns out animals are smart. We'll start with the obvious one, crows. We know crows are smart. But this time we actually found that it looks like they can infer how heavy an object is by seeing how the wind blows it around, which is all at once insane and makes perfect sense because it's a natural
Right,
element.
because it's a natural phenomenon, but when they're very familiar with themselves being something that lives in wind as part of, like, we think of wind as blowing, but we don't think of it as like a second gravity, right?
Yeah.
When it's going to determine our path through space.
Yeah, it's just an external impact on something you might care about. And so, of course, they're gonna start to figure that out. This is a big year for bees. We found that bees can identify number symbols if they're trained how, which we had a whole long conversation about whether they're just associating numbers with certain quantities and if that's different from what we do, which I argue it's the same. We're taught a symbol that means a number, and that's that. We also found that bees are able to discern art styles.
That one was, I know, what? Bees are art critics?
Yeah, so they can tell the difference between like impressionistic art and Art Deco. Anyway, we also found out that African gray parrots, already very, very smart birds, could actually figure out through inference by exclusion if something was in one cup or another cup. So basically you'd show them an empty cup and they would know that it's in the other cup, which sounds basic, but it is a pretty important logical argument. We found that apes could, in the absence of behavioral cues, they could look at their past experience and apply that to another individual. So basically there were these kind of goggles that were either clear or had blocks to their visual abilities. And then if you put them on another animal or a human, they would be able to infer that that human is having the same experience that they had, which is great. We found out that rats are less stressed out when they drive cars. Love that story.
I mean, I like to go for a drive, a relaxing drive every once in a while, but I never thought the rat wanted to also.
Yeah. And we also found out that wasps have they understand the transitive property. They have human deductive powers. If A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. Great stuff. Just in general, we found time after time that animals are very smart, that they have cognitive abilities similar to humans, but usually we just didn't figure out yet how to test it. So as soon as we start to figure out how better to test animals, I'm gonna assume, continue to find out that animals are quite smart.
I also think this category, our number 6, could have been the well, duh.
Yeah. I mean, to us, it's a well done, but I also feel like people who don't spend a lot of time with animals or time talking about or reading about animals don't necessarily know those things. I've had conversations with people on their first visit to the zoo asking if animals have feelings. And it wasn't a mean question. It was just kind of not understanding how similar we are to other animals in the world. And the more we can kind of identify that and recognize how similar we are, there's conservation impacts here, right? So the better we understand the cognitive abilities of animals, there's a better chance of us to recognize how similar we are and how they deserve the same protections that we do, and we can work together to help preserve those species. So, of course, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart as well.
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing isn't just that they are intelligent, but that they have a sort of plasticity within their intelligence to apply it to new and different things. And that's the thing that we sort of tend to assume, that animal intelligence is trapped into being what that animal is, or how they behave and what they do. And that's just it. It's as if it's just instinct and not something that they can have some control over and
that
be
they're
clever
robots
in new ways. And
so this has it has impact on nature versus nurture conversations. Absolutely. Because
and it has implications on evolution too, where you can sort of picture suddenly there's been a drastic change, and it's not just instinct and memory and genes or what have you and behavior that will carry you on, because all of those things are now lost to you in a sense. But in a new environment, intelligence could be the difference in surviving and adapting.
And then you start to wonder, was there a common ancestor for these things, or did they pop up on their own individually as evolutionary time progressed? Have we had some of these cognitive abilities since before we had backbones? Or has it come up again and again because it's so advantageous? So I think there are kind of cascading implications here. A lot of it may seem obvious to us, but it's great science with lots of cool implications.
Yeah. I mean, they're, very simple things like parental care, what goes in, what are the things I care about my son, and I love him, but I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to feed him. I'm going to keep him warm. I'm going to protect him. I'm going to do all these things. Right. And so did dinosaurs.
Yes.
So do birds today. So do,
do frogs.
So do frogs. Exactly. There are a lot of examples of this. And so, which behaviors are conserved really far back, which ones are more modern in their evolution. Yeah. And that reminds me of like the one, I think it was a study that Justin brought up, that apes today are smarter than humans used to be a long, long time ago. So humans and apes have both gotten smarter, more intelligent, bigger brains over time. But
and then you have to start asking yourself, are apes getting smarter because of human impact on their forests?
Right. Yeah.
Or are they getting what have they gotten smarter anyway?
To adapt.
Yeah.
No, and the other thing is, it's as time goes by, we're all as evolved as every other life form.
Yes.
We may have done more with our time. We've all have the same
kind of started in the same soup. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But I guess
some of us are now podcasting.
Yeah.
And I guess some of that point then too is that if a creature does find a really good niche that just works for them, maybe they don't have to rely on the intelligence, and that doesn't become a selectable trait. And then, so maybe some of your dumber animals have just always had it easy.
Yeah. R.I.P. dodos.
I'm sorry, dodos.
Also, koalas.
Oh, they weren't.
friendly.
The dodos were not dumb, by the way.
They were just friendly. They were very friendly. Yeah.
They were just friendly. They didn't know.
Yeah. Which you could argue is dumb because humans, turns out,
humans just took out clubs and then clubbed them.
Yeah, they have predatory vision. It's immediately like, hey, this bipedal thing with forward-facing eyes is interested in me. Maybe I shouldn't be its best friend. So I would argue intelligence might have something to do with that.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
All right.
Koalas has also almost gone extinct.
Not quite. Yeah.
Poor
koalas. Poor koalas.
Technically extinct.
Yeah. And we learned this year that maybe we should be giving them poop transplants.
Why?
That's right. For bacteria. They need bacteria to be healthy. But we have come to the end of the first half of our countdown, and we're going to take a quick break. We have 5 more to go. What is going to be in our top 5? Yeah, stay until after the break to find out. We'll be back in just a few moments with more This Week in Science coming up next.
Can't more than intuition. A line breeze that shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods, a hypothesis, and patience are the only things I need.
Thank you for bringing This Week in Science into your lives this year. Whoop, knocking things over here. We have a calendar. 2020 is on its way. There are 30 TWIS calendars left in the stockpile. Get yours today. Go to twis.org. Click on the frog. Click on the frog and get yourself a wonderful Blair's Animal Corner calendar with art by Blair. It's wonderful. It's also full of science, special science days and holidays. It's very sciencey. Keep up with your science geekiness with TWIS. Get yourself a calendar and always be current. Absolutely. That's right. twis.org is where you find that. Additionally, as we come to the end of the year, if you find yourself in the spirit of giving, you can join our Patreon by clicking the Patreon link at twis.org. And that allows you to donate to TWIS a chosen amount once per month at $10 or more per month. You will be read your name at the end of the show, thanked by name. Thank you, thank you, thank you in our Patreon supporters list. If you're not interested in a monthly donation or monthly support, you can also click on the Make a Donation link at twis.org, and that takes you to a PayPal interface where you can just do a one-time donation. Makes it nice and easy. I would love to have you think about supporting TWIS as we come to the end of the year. We thank you for your support this year. You enabled us to help Blair get a computer. We have moved onto this wonderful StreamYard platform, which if you are watching on video, allows us to do a lot of pretty neat stuff through video, and the audio sounds pretty good as well. So we just really want to thank you for your support in the transitions that we make through our technology. As we know, things break and we need new things, and it's your support that helps keep us going. Thank you for all of your support, and Merry Twistmas.
We can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A line breeze that shows the way to go.
And we are back.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, and we are continuing our countdown. We are now at number 5.
Five.
So this is another rare one in which a single story got its own category at the end of the year. But it was the imaging of a black hole. And there was actually a lot of black hole stories. Black hole could be its own category for other reasons. There was a lot of interesting things revolving around black holes, the views, the peaks we took towards the center of our own galaxy's black hole.
Mm-hmm.
And this one we had sort of a fun time because, wait, is this black hole story? Is this a space story? Is this a cosmology story? Or is this a physicist story? Or is this, it's the mathematicians who figured out that the angles at the thing, it's a math.
Or it's the computer scientists who put all the data together.
The computer scientists that made it manageable. Right, so all of it comes together, all these disciplines of science working together, and we have an image of a black hole. Now, how do you take an image of a thing from which light does not escape? Oh, that's tricky. So you can't. But there is.
End of the story.
You just can't.
But we did.
Wait, no, we took the picture and it came back completely black with no light whatsoever. Well, no, what they had figured out is because of the way that gravity works around a black hole, there's certain angles in which light that is passing around will get zipped back at you. And that's what they captured. So, and it's that's beyond the radius in which things can't come back out again. This is very complicated. A very well, not complicated. It's a very narrow bandwidth, actually, of light that they were able to capture that was affected by this black hole. And that's what sort of makes this very interesting. If the angle of the light that was heading towards this black hole is a little less or a little more, you don't see it. It gets absorbed or it just gets deflected off into some far off part of the universe and we never see it. But there's a certain angle, just a certain degree at which all the way around the light will be able to be focusing back our way. And therefore image it.
Yeah, I loved the aspect of this where they used detectors all over the planet to basically create a telescope that was as big as the planet. They turned Earth into the detector by putting all of the detectors together into one giant soup. And it made the picture that much clearer, which is pretty awesome.
And I like the description there that they're not calling it a picture of a black hole, but the shape of a black hole shadow.
Right.
Right.
So what did it look like?
And so that was the thing as well, is that because you're not looking at the light reflected from or emitted from the black hole, you can't say that we took a picture of a black hole, and they didn't. It's the shadow, and it's the light that is pulled around the black hole and then whips around, kind of doing a gravitational slingshot around the black hole back towards us. And so all the light that goes toward the black hole and then swings back at us, and we get to see that picture. And so it's kind of it's the shadow is what they've said, because we're getting those angles like Justin was saying, and and it's also the gravitational effect of the black hole on those particles of light that have swirled around the black hole. And so depending on the angle that we're viewing it from, you see the shadow looks different based on where we see it from, our angle of view. But what I loved the when it came down to theory of what this would look like versus reality of what it looked like when they actually put the picture together, they match. They absolutely match.
Yeah, and to the so closely too that it's. Did you really need to do it if you already? I mean, no,
that's what science, all science. Did you really need to do it if you knew it was going to happen?
Yes. Yes. We needed to do it to prove that what we thought would happen would happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? Because if something different happened, then you go, wait a minute, where are my perceptions wrong? So, hey, our black hole perceptions, they're right on, which is pretty awesome.
Just a little bit of a tickler for our top 11 of the decade. I just want to say, when we're talking about black holes and we're talking about dark matter, since I started on this show, our understanding has changed so much. Yeah. So much of it has just been like, well, we think maybe it'll act like this because we have these clues that maybe we understand what theoretically could happen if it's real, and then it's just completely changed to being so much more concrete and understandable. Pretty cool. I
think there's so much we still don't know.
For sure.
A few of our interviews have made that very clear, and it's really neat. You know, you see all the headlines that are like, we figured this out. And I'm like, no, we didn't. Not really. There's a little teeny tiny piece of the puzzle. It's just a theory, just an idea. But in the case of this black hole study, I think what grabbed everybody's, I guess, global consciousness was the hard work of the many people who worked together from multiple disciplines to make it happen, to make it possible. And then the few the few people who humanized it, who became, the people we saw, the young female graduate student or postdoc who's moved on to a different position since, but her face on discovering the black hole became this rallying cry for women in science, girls in STEM. It's, showing that everybody, diversity is important in science. And, when we all work together as a team, it gets even better. We can do amazing things.
So true.
Like, look at a black hole, but not really, just its shadow.
Yeah. Look at the dark side, light side of a black hole.
Yeah. Okay, moving on from number 5. What comes next? Number 4.
Four.
Brains. That's
Brains.
Right. Neuroscience rocked it this year. There were some incredible stories from researchers implanting false memories of songs into birds' heads. What false memories in birds? The birds never heard the songs, but the researchers made them think they did, which has really interesting implications for memories and our understanding of what is real and what is not. Additionally, there was a study with researchers working on, I think it was mice that did something very similar. They were able to give the mice, stimulate cells in the neurons in the mouse's visual cortex and make them see things that they were not actually seeing. So they stimulated seeing. And so the question is whether the method is recreating real vision within the brain, or is it still just a simulation of vision? We don't really know that for sure, but that has also further implications for being able to let people who cannot see have sight. What were you going to say?
And not to freak anybody out, but seeing light is a simulation.
It's a simulation. It's all a simulation. It's true.
You can't actually see anything.
It's true. It's true. Oh my gosh. Everyone's minds just blew up. But don't have that happen because, what else did we do? Oh, so many brain-computer interfaces. That was one of the big things this year. We had brain-to-speech decoders. There were a couple of stories on advances in these decoders that could take signals from the brain and create speech, synthesized speech out through a computer. One of them used vocoder technology to do that. Another one from UCSF was able to take full sentences from neural activity in the motor cortex to be able to translate those. Other researchers are improving the accuracy of brain-computer interfaces that control robotic arms. Then, of course, who can forget Elon Musk's company Neuralink that made waves this year, that had a presentation. They published a paper detailing their efforts with their robot and with their brain-computer interfaces to improve the interface, make it like their mesh technology. And they're hoping to get to human trials within the year. I haven't heard anything yet. We're still waiting for it, but I don't know. And additionally, we had brain-to-brain transmission. Researchers used EEG and transcranial stimulation. So nothing actually in the brain. It was all surface of the head stuff. So from outside the brain, researchers demonstrated brain-to-brain transmission of information. And the two studies that really kind of blew my mind this year, there was a study that was looking at human brain preservation, and they were able to actually show that it seems like, yes, the human brain does have new brain cells created throughout life that are born in the brain throughout life. And Russian researchers, and the final one, Russian researchers were able to watch thoughts that were taking place in the brain in real time. They were reconstructing thoughts from the brain, and they were watching them in real time, not recordings. And the accuracy, the resolution of these images, these thoughts from the brain were, people just imagining things. Think of a flower. Okay, I'll think of a flower, and they're looking at it all on the computer screens. It's a leap forward in brain reading ability by computers.
That's one of the ones that gets into kind of the dystopian future stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds like you can read my thoughts a little bit, and I don't like it.
Yeah, but yes, potentially it could lead to awesome things like being able to, if you're a fighter pilot, being able to interface in split-second timing, not having to have as long of a delay for motor signals to go down to your hand to be able to control the control stick for flying a fighter jet or something like that. Maybe you could interface even faster.
Or
if you're a
if
gamer, maybe you can interface with your games that much faster, play that much faster, better, stronger. Or if you are, in a locked-in syndrome,
right?
If you're paralyzed, if you're
if you're in a coma,
how can you communicate with people? Maybe these are the technologies that will help. Blair, you can always take it to the dystopian places, but the reality is that most often the things are going to be used for good.
Yes. Truth. But this is also why we have to have, certain accrediting bodies and conversations and restrictions on these sorts of things so that these things don't fall into the wrong hands.
Mm-hmm.
So they will.
Yeah.
The point is it's going to be all of the above.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be used for good, and it's going to be used for ill. A lot of these sort of cutting both ways, or potentially, a dire future or a great outcome. It kind of reminds me of something like a non-lethal weapon, like the taser or something like this. It's an alternative to shooting somebody. So in some ways, there's going to be some social benefit to having a less lethal weapon that police can defend themselves with. On the other hand, it's probably going to get used a lot more. Mm-hmm. So you're going to end up with a lot of people being tased who shouldn't ever have been tased, and a few less people getting shot, maybe. But you're going to get the benefit with the ill on any.
And that's not a reason to not proceed in technology. So
no, it's also like the internet has been a wonderful boon to society, and it's one of the darkest, awfulest, horriblest things that you could ever expose it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's listening to me and it sends me ads I don't want, and other times it's listening to me and it helps me find a place when I'm lost. So there are pros and cons always.
Pros and cons for everything.
Home security cameras. People have lost their password or had it figured out because they used the same password too many times, and something got hacked. And now all of their passwords, and so people try the password on their home security thing and have access to live video inside their house as well as audio where they can talk to. So then you have somebody saying awful, horrible things to somebody, freaking them out in their home, which they were obviously already paranoid enough to put security cameras in, just making the situation worse than it was to begin with. You're going to get both with every technology. Yes.
And let's talk about a positive thing. What's going to come that's positive? Yes. Blair, what's our next number?
Number 3. We want to talk about, I was very excited to bring this up because I feel like before I even started looking through things for the year, this was the topic that kind of was calling out to me from the void about what was so special about 2019, and it's disease cures. This year has been an amazing boon to the technologies and methodologies for curing deadly or devastating disease in humans. We had a study from University of Buffalo looking at reversing Alzheimer's disease, which for anyone who has been touched by this disease or has known someone who's had it is obviously a pretty big deal. This was in mice, so not yet in humans, but the idea of reversing kind of the Swiss cheesification that happens to your brain during Alzheimer's is a pretty big deal. There were 2 different situations where HIV was removed or cured, which is insane and so exciting. So one of them was actually the second HIV patient who appears to have been cured of infection by a stem cell transplant. The other one was something using CRISPR-Cas9 through gene editing. They were able to cure someone of HIV through that process. This was proof of concept, not yet used in treatment, but this is something they were looking at.
Yeah, that one's really cool because they basically they stimulate the HIV to produce particles and start its machinery up. And when it does that, then they send in the CRISPR-Cas9 to chop it out of the cells. So it's like, turn on your machinery, go, go, go. And then they go in and they snip it out.
It's a trap.
It's a trap, exactly.
And I
HIV
think the
trap.
bigger part of that is getting it to turn on. Because it's been like a whack-a-mole thing. Like the virus has the ability to hide.
Right.
So even if you have an effective treatment to it, if the treatment can't get to the HIV, it does no good.
Right. So you can have HIV, but not AIDS. It can sit latent. There's all this kind of stuff that impacts it. There was another story that we talked about where CRISPR was able to fix retinal deterioration, which is a huge impact. Also, a Japanese woman was the first in the world to receive a corneal transplant, and it appears to be going well. So we are looking at potentially restoring sight in people who have lost sight. Ebola. There are some new drugs that have been trialed where it looks like they're able to reduce the mortality rate from Ebola. And then just in general, you throw all the diseases out the window. One of the biggest killers, getting old. There's actually age reversal drugs now that are being tested. On average, they shed about 2.5 years off the biological ages of subjects. This was 9 healthy volunteers, and it was a cocktail of 3 drugs. And then in mice, there was another one where they used gene therapy, and they were able to reverse symptoms of age-related diseases in mice. So we looked at curing a bunch of diseases, but also just reversing the aging process, which, as you know, is something I am very interested in.
Blair wants to live forever.
I want to live forever. Yep.
So I was looking at previously the getting ready for next week's show. This decade of the top 11s that we did. And human health, I think, made it near the top because of anti-aging and age reversal stuff. But yeah, this is, again, we always double-edgedness of things. Because while you said
people?
this Kiki was going to be the positive news, number
bring us down.
2... Now I'm going to bring you right back down. Number two, all these people living longer and surviving diseases means that global warming will kill a lot more people.
That's right. Oh, climate change.
We're just setting up a higher body count.
Yeah.
So, the IPCC reports everything, and this isn't just this year, but it's like every year, everything is coming out with, we were trending towards the highest or using things that they hadn't even thought to look at the time. Worse. Things are hotter. The melting is faster. Mm-hmm. The consequences are becoming more clear and more dire. Now none of it is good news. None of it is good news.
I would say
what's
the frequency of the news is kind of good, though, because as this show has progressed, it has become very clear that we are not the only ones talking about this. It is not a fringe topic. It is an everyday conversation that is becoming more frequent, which is the only way we're going to get ourselves out of any of this trouble. So the fact that it's becoming a more mainstream conversation, that people are talking less and less about whether it's happening, but how it's happening, what the impacts are, and what we can do about it, is a huge shift in the conversation. So that's kind of my plug as the silver lining here, is that this huge avalanche of climate change news is also a symptom of the fact that it is a larger narrative than it ever was before.
Yeah, it's suddenly gone from being on a few websites to being talked about on the nightly news to being discussed. I just saw a story tonight about renewable energy sources, and in the lead-in to the topic, the people said burning coal releases carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide contributes to climate change. And so it was straight up in the very, the very beginning of a local news broadcast this evening.
Wow.
And so knowing that is happening it's heartening. And we also have people like Greta Thunberg, who are leading a youth movement. It's been a year.
They're leading
I didn't know who she was last year. Yeah.
She's leading an adult movement as well. We haven't done a TWIS official and unofficial person of the year in a while, but this is definitely it. My favorite thing is that she's done. She has got the savvy that I have never seen even any activist in her role before. Which is, she said so recently, she's going to stop doing selfies with political leaders because it's giving them the gratification of having done something when they've done nothing. Like, she's literally holding feet to fire on issue that I'm trying to find another example of somebody who to that point was no meeting. There was one where they said all these glowing words and talked about the new technologies. It was one of these UN summits, or one of these things where they brought leaders from many countries together to talk about it. And her speech was, everywhere I go, people talk about new technologies that are coming on the horizon, and they make themselves feel good in the moment, but they do nothing in the moment. Just every time she speaks, I'm like, I wish I was that articulate and that on point. And while we've been talking about it for a long time, I do feel like it is sort of being normalized in that, because of global warming, obviously this, but it's being treated, as we often talk about, as an act of nature, an act of God, an act of nature, a thing of force that just happens. Global warming, you have gravity, you have bad storms, you have rain, you have summer, you have winter, you have global warming. It's just another thing.
No,
that's
it's
how
human
it's being
caused
presented.
Climate disruption.
Which is how it appears in the new science standards that have been adopted in most states at this point. It's supposed to be part of our public education process now. So people from a young age will understand the carbon cycle and how industrial use of fossil fuels impacts that cycle. And so I think that while you're right, Justin, that I think there's still sometimes a shroud over the mechanism, we're getting better at identifying the mechanism. And I think one of the things that I've learned through my work with Noki is that you can't call the mechanism humans. You have to call the mechanism us. Because by saying it's them, that means I'm not part of it. I'm doing my thing. I have my reusable straw. I'm not part of the problem. It's us. It's all of us. And it's going to take all of us to fix it, which is why having the narrative without guilt too is a big part of it, right? Is recognizing that don't feel bad about what you did yesterday. Let's get excited about what we can do today and tomorrow and the day after that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so 3 or 4 things about this really quick. I'm going to try to say them fast. I'm going to try to say it really fast. The 3 new weapons against doing anything about it are there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
It's
Too
hopeless.
late. Yeah.
Right.
It's not.
It's not hopeless.
Is right. Nothing is right. Nothing is hopeless. Hope is absolutely on the way. It's not yet. It's not yet. But if everybody thinks hope is on the way, they don't have to do anything. Nothing
Nope.
needs
That's
to change.
actually not true.
Hope is here
The
right
hope
now.
thing is actually the most impactful on action. And research has shown that time and time again, that fear shuts people down and stops them from doing anything. And that hope actually engages people, gets excited, and makes them do something right away in a big way.
And you're right.
Hope is the right
The blaming thing as well. But what I'm talking about is in the local media and everything, it's being normalized to a thing that they're gaining almost acceptance that this is the way it's going to be. This is why I like Greta so much, is because she's attacking the people who are trying to position
into
themselves as being. Yes.
Turn it into a status quo. Yeah.
Yes. Or
I think that might be true for
the hopefulness.
That might be true for people who are not in areas that are currently being impacted heavily by it, or don't feel the impact because they are perhaps extra privileged in their ability to reach certain things. But for the people that are feeling the impacts of climate change, like people in Northern California and Southern California,
Australia,
they
right now.
don't want this to be the new normal. They're terrified of that. And I think that is where you have to find the balance, is the everyday person that feels this impact that we talk about on the show every week. We need to keep them from feeling helpless and feel hopeful, but also give them an outlet to make this not normal.
And
how can we keep this from becoming the new normal?
Well, what people are going to see is that the news that came out this year of a lot of bad news, that things are getting worse, things are happening faster, there's a bug apocalypse, animals are threatened and dying. There's a lot happening. Potentially our oceans are going to be impacted in a way that will decrease oxygen availability eventually, maybe sooner than later. All these things can be potentially avoided or reduced in their extremity. And we're going to see more of this news. This news is going to be normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my only the overarching thing I will say is I don't think the activists. I think that there's a sort of Title IX version correlation to planting the seeds and building the Common Core scientific STEM for a current generation that will inform people 20 years, 30 years from now. What I'm talking about is the immediate time. I don't think the reaction is disruptive enough.
So I'll just
it's
plug one thing
enough.
really quick.
I don't think it's even like, we haven't even seen like a G8 summit type trade angst type reaction yet. And
so
we need that.
There won't be.
So
that's the problem.
There are people out there like Greta that are eloquent speakers and disruptors, and we need them. But we actually need everybody. So the last thing I will kind of plug about this is that there's this thing called the Story of Change. It's from the people who wrote the Story of Stuff. And you can actually learn about all the different types of people it takes to start a movement and make a societal change. And you can even take a quiz and see what kind of change maker you are. And you might be an activist, you might be a caretaker, you might be a supporter, you might be an organizer, you might be a teacher. There's all these different roles that we need to make social change. And so recognizing what you are best at and how you can best commit to that can actually help engage people who don't feel like they can go up to Congress and call them all cowards. So there's room for everyone in a movement. And I think that talking about it is the first step, which is what we're doing here right now. But I encourage everybody to find out what you can do, because there's something that everyone can do that's individual to their own strengths and comforts.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the one thing that I'd probably be decent at in any form of revolution is setting a lot of things on fire, which is I get is not going to be productive. It would be actually counterproductive in this scenario. So I'm gonna step a little bit back, but.
Well, maybe you're an activist or a disruptor. I don't know what the term
Disruptor.
is. You should take the test.
Definitely a disruptor.
Number one.
Oh yeah, we're gonna take it.
Number one.
We're gonna take it away from Debbie Downer's climate change hour, and we're going to take it to number one. Biotechnology. Biotechnology gets number one, or as we also like to call it, Blair's Science Ethics Conundrums Corner.
Get over it.
So this year in bioethics, this year in biotech,
Nice.
we had a number of really interesting stories. First off the docket, Chinese researchers created using CRISPR macaque monkey embryo clones. So they used fibroblast cells, those are skin cells, taken from the embryos using somatic nuclear transfer. That's the same procedure that was used to create Dolly, the original cloned sheep. And they created CRISPR-edited macaque monkeys, little monkey clones. And they were cute little monkeys, too. They're totally fine. And then the Chinese researchers edited human genes for brain development into monkeys using gene editing technology. And maybe the monkeys got a little bit smarter as a result of those genes that got edited into their brains. Wasn't development. They weren't playing with embryos. They weren't making chimeras. They just put some genes in the neurons in the brain, injected in there. Pushing the envelope a little bit there. Spanish and American researchers went to China. What, did you have something to say?
Well, I feel like there's a lot of international pressure to prevent the Chinese from exploiting workers and human workers specifically. But I think if they could get monkeys to do a lot of the manufacturing jobs for them that require the fine handwork, people would be like, it's just monkeys working. Who cares?
I feel like that might be. I feel like there's people out there that would like that even less.
Probably.
Well, then they're against the ox pulling the plow in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, you go all the way back to having animals work. There's a smaller segment that care about that, and we all ignore them.
No, we don't. Oh my goodness.
But
then, so moving on the list of things that researchers have been doing biotech-wise, researchers, Spanish and American, they went to China because they wanted to avoid some research regulations restricting the creation of human primate chimeras. And chimeras are organisms that contain the cells from multiple, 2 or more organisms. We don't like the idea of putting humans together with in chimeras with a lot of other organisms, specifically primates, because of the potential for intelligence and other aspects that could come through. Nothing was ever scientifically published that anybody's seen, but there's just reports of this having happened and successfully producing human monkey embryos that were allowed to develop for a week or 2. So these were just balls of cells. They weren't allowed to live very long and only allowed to develop a short time. But it hasn't been published, so we don't know yet.
I'm just going to avoid regulations to do an experiment and then not publish it.
So there's some big questions about that one. Researchers in Tel Aviv, using 3D printing technology, 3D printed the first vascularized human heart, which is super exciting because that means you've got blood vessels going into the muscle that will oxygenate the muscle. You can have the whole organ working well. And the fact of 3D printing, the idea of cells cells being used to print an organ. This is a dream of regenerative medicine. The problem, it was only as big as a rabbit's heart, so it wasn't, you could do a heart transplant on a rabbit, but not on a human. But this is a good first step. 3D printing with vascularization, that's a big deal, and I know we're going to see more of this kind of stuff moving forward in the years to come.
Oh yeah, I love this. I love the 3D printing of organs thing. I'm all about it.
So about it. Gene therapy for heart attacks. On the other side of things, if you don't actually need a whole transplant, researchers used RNA to stimulate cells to repair after heart attacks, after myocardial infarction. And research has been really pushing stem cell injections, being able to take stem cells, put them into the heart, and get the stem cells to repair damage from heart attacks. And it just hasn't worked. We've also been trying to get hearts to grow new stem cells, inject with certain factors, and maybe new stem cells will grow and the heart will fix itself. It hasn't happened. But this RNA treatment seemed to do the trick. And in the animals that they did the experiments on, they regained a lot of function, and it was very successful. Moving beyond that, our good friend Gene Drive has taken a big jump this year. Researchers, they were working on making gene drive in mammals this year, which I don't know if we really want that. I mean, talking about gene drive in mosquitoes has been scary enough. And researchers in Italy began an experiment to explore gene drive in a realistic seeming lab environment, because the last experiment using gene drive in mosquitoes, they were completely successful at sterilizing their mosquitoes, and the whole population in the lab died out. So it was extremely successful, killed off the population of mosquitoes. The worry is if you release these organisms into the wild, that it could have a broader reaching negative impact on an ecosystem. And speaking of such unintended consequences, I had a story that I called Oops, Mosquitoes. Researchers, this isn't with gene drive, but they had used gene modification technology to genetically modify mosquitoes to reduce their populations. These are mosquitoes that were modified in the lab and then released in Brazil. And they determined that some of the genes, not the ones that were modified now, but genes from this lab population did spread into the wild mosquito population. And the question is, what will happen with these lab genes afoot in the wild?
Let's not forget, real quick, that we learned in the last few years, mosquitoes are pollinators.
Yes.
So I just want to remind everybody
this is what I was about to tell.
Mosquitoes are useless. Turns out they have a job.
So this is an interesting thing. So I was just having this conversation too, because having spent some time in Scandinavia recently, I noticed there's not any bees. They don't have bees. But they do have mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. They're, what we consider to be main pollinators in a very pollinator diverse ecosystem in California don't exist to any great degree other places. Mosquitoes, they kind of make it wherever you go. Mosquitoes are there. And there's probably a huge botanical ecosystem that's absolutely dependent on them. Mm-hmm. So maybe we need to continue to work on malaria cures, vaccines, or some sort of thing that gets the parasite out the other end of the mosquito quicker, and stop planning to kill all the mosquitoes. Yeah. They have a very important function in many parts of this world.
Maybe we'll just kill some of the mosquitoes. There are places with lots of mosquitoes. Do they really need that many mosquitoes? Especially the ones, that suck your blood. Are they the same ones that are pollinating?
Well, it's sort of like if you had a perfect example. What is it? The killer bees, the African
Yes,
knives, whatever it is.
Africanized bees. Yeah.
Okay. So you have killer bees, and because some local population in southern Texas has a problem with these bees, they gene drive them, and it kills all bees on the planet. There goes agriculture. There goes get family massive. We cannot be making decisions for the entire planet based on localized issues.
No.
Ecosystems are complicated. Animals and plants have impacts we don't realize, cascading impacts we don't realize.
Yeah.
And historically, this has not gone well for us. So this is just a good time for us to look back and go, when we've added things, usually not good. When we've subtracted things, also usually not good. So just a good reminder that when we make these sweeping decisions, it doesn't always work out well. That being said, if
Sometimes.
it's tested well and this thing only impacts, for example, infected mosquitoes, that could be a cool thing. There's lots of options here. I'm not saying to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater, but
why would you ever do that in the first place?
You know, it's
It's a saying.
allegory is the thing.
Who's
Idiom.
ever done
It's
that?
an idiom.
Yeah.
Nobody
It's
does
an-
that.
it's an
That's
old
the
practice,
point,
'cause the
is that
baby
nobody
bathed
does
last.
that.
So some final
Anymore, because
stories.
it used to be the baby bath.
Some final biotech stories. Some final biotech stories here that are super cool. There was the Yale researchers with brain X perfusion, where they kept some pig brains alive after they were decapitated for
It's
several
alive!
hours.
This reminded
What
me
does
of the
this
Mars
mean?
Attacks movie where they have the heads with the that are
Yeah.
decapitated. Anyway.
Yeah, what does this mean for potentially resuscitating people, for bringing people back, for for
The
preserving
technology to keep heads in jars.
Yes.
A la Futurama. I'm all about it.
Yeah, and the final one that I think is just very, very cool was the most recent chimera that was created. Researchers created the monkey pig. It wasn't a lot of monkey in the pig, but they injected
Just a sprinkle of monkey in that.
just a sprinkling of macaque into the pigs, and
It was just a pig that had an urge to climb trees, but no ability to do so.
no
It's kind of
ability.
sad to
Yeah.
watch.
There was something on the order of 1 in 10,000 cells that were monkey in several pig organs when they looked at the organs in the surviving individuals, and not many individuals survived in the first place. They ended up having something like 2 individuals that were chimeric and survived. So the IVF procedure they are blaming for not working, and it's like, really, we've been doing IVF for a really long time now, and you think your IVF procedure isn't working? I'm not so sure about that. I think you should check some other factors. But the reality is, perhaps we will have pig organs that have monkeyness or more humanness at some point in the future for transplantation. And biotechnology is taking us in that direction. It's very, very interesting and exciting. And I'm glad we are finally able to do these chimeric experiments that for years were really not being done. We're finally at a point where where regulations have been relaxed enough to allow this kind of experimentation. And it's going to tell us a lot about what different species need, I guess, their genetics and how they fit together or don't. Why cells work together or don't work together. And how we can potentially, I mean, it'll tell us more about life in general, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, I think before you take this to the 11th degree and kind of take this to a crazy space where people don't want to think about it ethically, when you look at it, it ultimately is just a reminder, again, humans are animals. We're just mammals. So if we're trying to figure out how to best take care of ourselves and keep people alive who need organs,
Yeah.
or how to experiment on animals in a way to figure out how to keep humans alive who are very sick, find cures for diseases, all this kind of stuff. If we're just mammals, it's not as icky as it sounds. And I think that's part of the hubris that we all kind of have to shake off in this conversation. We're just animals, guys. We're not that different.
And it does, at a certain point, it goes to that level of biology as information processing.
Mhm.
You know, how much of the output that is flesh and bone, you know, is similar across the different species. How much is different? What? And I find it fascinating, the biological information theory of life.
Mhm.
What goes into making things? It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's not that different, and I think the perspective also depends on whether you are a doctor trying to save a life or a patient trying to prolong your life. You know, if it's monkey hearts or human liver came out of a pig, whatever. But I get it. To somebody who's not in those situations, and somebody's like, "Muhahaha! I can put a cockroach liver into you." No, don't do it. Yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. Like that's like, yeah, it sounds monstrous, but when there's an actual patient, or you are the patient,
And you will be benefited.
Yeah, I'd take a cockroach liver to live an extra 10 years. I don't care. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I feel like you'd need a
Absolutely.
lot of cockroach livers.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to use like something that might be even sound grosser than it needs to be, but that's it's just it's your perspective on these things.
Cockroaches
One is
have
a
livers.
grown-up adult is like watching a monster movie as a
Like,
teenager.
no.
Going, ew. Yeah.
So that is our top 11, everybody. Let us know what you think about our list. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Would you have put things in different orders? Do you think that we picked some pretty good stories to highlight for the end of the year? And as we finish up the show, hey, Blair, there's a few stories that didn't make it on the list, even beyond the top 11.
Yeah, I just have a couple of honorable mentions from the animal corner. One is on zebra stripes. They showed up 3 times this year. The conversation about why zebras have stripes is still very much, the jury is out on it. Our general understanding is that zebra stripes repel flies, but why? So there was one story where they dressed up horses as zebras, and the horses wearing zebra striped coats did in fact get bit less by biting flies. But then there was this other story that was kind of anecdotal, but was very interesting, about how the black hair versus the white hair creates these kind of convection currents that make it hard for the flies to land. And then there was a whole nother one looking at cows that were physically painted like zebras, and they found that they were also bitten less by biting insects. So generally, it's seeming like we can throw that whole theory out the window, not out the window, but kind of like behind this one as to why zebras are striped. The understanding before was that it's cryptic coloration, breaks up their body shape. So when they're in a dazzle, I think is what it's called, of zebras, then they all kind of blend together into one mass of stripes. That may be true, and that might be one of the reasons that it's that shape. But ultimately, it looks like the evolutionary reason for zebra stripes is most likely to repel flies, which I just love the methodology in use here over the year on zebra stripes. The other honorable mention yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna throw in real quick. When you're talking about the evolutionary reason for, it could be that the evolutionary reason for zebras having stripes has long outlived its usefulness. It could be that poor vision from predators could have been doing that group camouflage thing to an early zebra, and that, but it was such a strong impact that it's carrying over. we have a tendency sometimes to attribute traits and characteristics to being absolutely prevalent in the now, when, as you said, evolutionarily, they could have been really useful and important, but were such a strong trait that they've carried over, even though their usefulness as a trait or as a thing is no longer actually necessary. So we always have to kind of watch, assuming that it's in the exact now that it's important.
Here's my devil's advocate for you. Okapis. Okapis have zebra stripes on their butts and on their legs, and that is the only place. Why? Because those are the places with the thinnest skin and where they are going to be bit by biting insects most. So that would indicate that perhaps those zebra stripes on an okapi are there for a similar reason. So there's clues that we have that aren't just based on kind of this one, but you can look through evolutionary history and see what other animals had this and where and why. And so it's looking good, is all I'm saying.
Can I ask you something? Can I ask you a really quick question?
Yeah.
Is it likely that if there's areas where you get bit more, that your skin would get thicker?
Yes, unless
okay,
it
well,
needs to be highly vascularized for other reasons.
Right. Yeah. So, but you're right though. You do, and then that could be it. That could be it. That could be the defining thing that says it's not an ancient thing where there was. Yes, you're right.
So anyway, we looked at zebra stripes all this year, but the other honorable mention that I have tonight is, of course, the transient anus.
Transient anus.
Of course.
So this was a study looking at ctenophores, looking at what perhaps is the evolution of the anus. And this animal has an anus that only exists when it needs to poop. It disappears when it does not have anything to evacuate. And then it reappears when it is time to get rid of extra stuff. So this was just an amazing story. Not always in the same place. Same general area, but not exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So this was such an amazing look at to what might be the first secondary opening evolutionarily, and how the anus evolved.
From whence the anus came.
From where the sun don't shine.
That's right.
But isn't this thing alive now? Doesn't that
mean
it's
but they are
one of the most advanced anuses that has ever been?
They are one of the very first two-holed animals. So there were animals that had the same hole for ins and outs for a very long time. Yeah. And they were one of the very first that had both a mouth and an anus that were independent.
Except it wasn't always there.
Wasn't always there.
It isn't always there.
Was not always there.
Yes, so fascinating. So fascinating. I had a few honorable mentions, or I guess some things that were left off on purpose as well. Hagfish slime is something that I thought was just cool. And we learned about how hagfish slime gets to be so slimy this year. And then it's all tied up in these little tiny balls, and they go and they expand all over the place. And the slime, it's magic. It's not magic, but now we know how the hagfish slime works, which means that, of course, we can reverse engineer it and make man-made hagfish slime.
Mm-hmm. Because, yay!
Because hagfish slime. Yeah. It's awesome. And then the story that really didn't make the list because it became kind of mundane this year, exoplanets. Kepler was finding things, and then they've been kind of ending the Kepler mission, and TESS, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey, has been taking up the mantle of looking for exoplanets a little closer to home than Kepler, which is cool. So we're finding things a little closer, but now it's like exoplanets are kind of a dime a dozen. So even though there were discoveries this year, didn't make the list because of that. But one of the cool things that we did find with exoplanets is we started looking at atmospheres around exoplanets. So now we started and we found a couple of baby exoplanets forming in the dust ring around a star. So we think that and we're direct imaging some exoplanets now. So this is really starting to get at a new level of exoplanet science. And I think it didn't really hit this year, but I think in the years to come, we're going to be seeing a new stage of exoplanet science that will be really exciting to report on and talk about. But it's not there yet, but it's tantalizing because it's almost there.
My favorite story of the year that didn't make the list was the plants listening to bees and reacting in real time. I found that story incredibly interesting.
Oh, I have to say, I had a favorite story that I just remembered. And I actually think this was my favorite story of the whole year, which is why we hiccup.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that it's because as babies, our automatic part of our nervous system telling us to breathe all the time isn't quite up and running yet. And our hiccup is telling us, don't forget to breathe. I had the hiccups real bad a couple days ago, and I was thinking about it the whole time. Like, oh, this is vestigial from when I was a baby, and I forgot to breathe. How neat.
If that had been me, I probably would have started giggling, and that would have made my hiccup stop because I'd be giggling about the vestigial aspect of the hiccup. And anyway.
Every time this puppy has the hiccups, I'm like, oh, don't forget to breathe.
Oh, little puppy, don't forget to breathe. Ah, yeah. Breathe, little puppy, breathe. Oh, everyone, I think we've come to the end of our top 11, plus a few more. Show.
It's always expanding, like the universe.
Like the universe. It's so hard to pick one or two or three things. And yeah, I'm sure that we could have one story to highlight some of these categories, but it's fun to talk it all through. And I like categories as opposed to just specific stories because really science is, when any one story very often is just anecdotal, right? It's one set of data. You need to have multiple levels of evidence. And that is why I like seeing them as categories and fitting things all together. How does it all fit together into our body of knowledge? And how we look at the world. Yeah, thank you for watching the show. Thank you for joining us for another year of This Week in Science. I would love to give shout outs to everyone in the chat room. Thank you, those of you who are hanging out and chatting and entertaining us and being a part of the conversation while we do the show. Thank you to Gord McLeod, who helps run our main chat room. Thank you to Fada, who keeps things going over on YouTube, who does our show notes and over on YouTube and also helps with social media. Thank you to Identity4 for recording the show for us so that we have the audio files so that we can publish this show as a podcast. And I would love to thank my Patreon sponsors. But you know what? Can't, because through this whole show, I forgot to make the page where I can see it. So now I have to do that to see the list because I don't have the list in front of me. And it's just scrolling and scrolling.
Well, don't forget to go to patreon.com/thisweekinscience to figure out how to become a patron if you want to be added to this group. And there's all sorts of cool perks from that. So if you would really want it, if you find yourself next week after the holidays, you didn't get that TWIS merch you were hoping for the holidays, go to Patreon. There's stuff that you can get there, including original artwork by me and all sorts of shirts and patches and the shout outs here. So be sure to check that out. Kiki, you have your list?
Thank you to Paul Disney, Ed Dyer, Andrew Swanson, Craig Landon, Ed Stu Pollock, Philip Shane, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prather, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Richard Porter, Mark Mazzaros, Jack Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K, Bob Calder, Eric Knapp, Richard, Brian Condren, Dave Neighbor, Taylor P.S., Josiah Zahner, Howard Tan, Donald Mundis, Sarah Forfar, Dan K, Matt Bass, Darwin Hannon, Patrick Pecoraro, Ben Bignell, Jean Tellier, John Gridley, Corinne Benton, Adam LaJoy, Sarah Chavis, Rodney Lewis, Tiffany Boyd, John Bertram, Mountain Sloth, Seth O'Gradney, Stephen Albaron, John Ratnaswamy, Dave Friedel, Daryl Myshak, Paul Ronovich, Sue Doster, Dave Wilkinson, Noodles, Kevin Reardon, Christoph Zuknurek, Ashish Pants, Ulysses Adkins, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Slazewski, Jim Drapode, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Steve Leisman, Kurt Larson, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessenflow, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, and E.O. Thank you for your support on Patreon. And if you would like to, or if you are interested in supporting us, you can find information through the Patreon link at TWIS.org. On next week's show, we're not having a regular show. No regularly scheduled show.
No Christmas Eve day show.
Yeah, it's not where it doesn't fit with the holidays, and so it's not happening. This is our last regularly scheduled show of the year. You will find us once again on our regularly scheduled Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time in January. January 8th will be our first regularly scheduled show. However,
It's on the calendar. There you go.
yes, it's on that calendar that Blair made that you can find at twist.org. But we may be doing a decade in review show next week. Stay tuned to the social medias and other outlets where we broadcast this kind of stuff. If you're just catching it on your podcast catcher or your subscriptions, there may be another show, a little Twistmas present for you.
Ooh.
A decade in review, potentially coming up in the next week or so. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Well, you can find all of this stuff at twist.org. You can watch us live at twist.org/live. You can find past episodes on YouTube or at twist.org. And finally, I want to remind everyone to mark your calendars for January 16th. It's a Thursday night, San Francisco Cal Academy of Sciences Nightlife as part of San Francisco's SF Sketchfest. We're going to be broadcasting live from Cal Academy. Get your tickets if you can now.
Thank you for enjoying the show. Twist is also available as a podcast. So if you've run out of shows like we have because it's the end of the year and you've got to wait a couple of weeks, just look for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found, and there'll probably be some of the 750 episodes that we've done that you haven't listened to yet. If you did enjoy the show, remember, tell your friends about TWIS. That's how most people hear about the show, is through their friends.
Truth. For more information on anything you've heard here today, for example, if you heard us mention some stories from way back in the year, you can find show notes for today's show and many shows in the past at our website, www.twist.org. While you're there, make some comments, start conversations with other listeners or us, the hosts. And while you're there, order some calendars. We only have 30 of these left, so they are limited edition. And if you buy one of these and bring them to a live show, I will be happy to sign one. So please buy a calendar. They support the podcast. There's only 30 left.
Act fast. Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in this subject line. Otherwise, what will happen to your email?
Spam filtered into oblivion.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here in some form next week, but definitely in the new year in 2020. And we hope you'll join us again then for more great science news.
Yes. But if you've learned anything from this show,
It's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views. But I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. Got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought. And I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. Science. This Week in 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 Science.
And now, this is the after show. This is the after show. This is the show that's after the show. It's the show that's part of the show, but not really.
What? Did you just make up that song?
I did. Why are you awake? My child is still awake. This is not good. He uses these evenings when the father is out of town and nobody is making him go to bed as an opportunity to stay awake, shirk his responsibilities as a child, to sleep and get rest and grow his brain. Yes.
I learn about people.
You learn about people?
I learn to be social.
Don't be social. Go to sleep.
Why don't I be social?
Go to sleep. Don't be social. Lie down. Lie down. Hey, you're going to knock something over. I don't like the way you're acting right now. Lie down, please. Nope. Please lie down. Lie down. No, lie down. I need you to go to sleep. We're not going to do a long after show. I hope Justin comes back. He put a comment in the private chat saying he's going to go to sleep now. But he's still here. His connection is still there. So he hasn't left. He has turned off his camera.
Okay.
So I'm confused. But yes. Hey,
Well-
everybody who's watching. Good to see you here. It's always fun to do the top 11 show. It's just, it takes a lot of time to put together. And do. It's gotten longer over the years. Foresight 2020. Why are you awake, Daniel Folland? I don't know. Why are you awake? Gabriella Lara, I'm glad you're learning English and science. That's fantastic. Singing Saw Guy, it's not quite the solstice yet.
Close.
But it's close. I do like the solstice. It is the day of the year when I know the days will only get longer because it's the shortest day of the year. I know there's no place to go but a sunnier existence. So to me, that is why I celebrate. I'm much more happy celebrating the solstice.
I
Oh,
just
you're
want
awake
everyone to
because-
see this,
Corgi?
but it's
What-
hard to.
What are you trying to show
I'm
off?
trying to show the way she's sleeping. Hold on.
I can't
I'm gonna
see.
move.
Just go pick her up. No.
No, look at her back
those
feet.
little. Oh, she moved. Her
She's
little.
like, stop
back
talking
feet.
about me.
She's so cute. Hey, little corgi. How you doing, puppy? No, it's hard to see. Maybe you can see when we go to San Francisco. Maybe you can. Maybe you can meet Sadie, the corgi.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yes. Is it Saturnalia? That sounds exciting. Thanks for enjoying the top 11 end of year show, Fada. Have a good night's sleep, tired guy. Daniel Folland is awake because science is awesome. I can't disagree with that. I cannot. Thunder Beaver, yeah. You wish you didn't have to sleep. I like sleep. I really enjoy sleep. I get upset when I'm not able to sleep. And then Ben Rothig, you say going to sleep is easier the closer you get to 40. Well, there's this wonderful thing on the other side of 40, how you get further away from it, it's harder to go to sleep again. So it's like 40 maybe is the sweet spot. Ed, why are you criticizing my parenting methods? It always works when I tell my son to go to sleep. Go to sleep.
No.
Yeah, he's being really defiant recently. I got some issues with that.
I never go to sleep.
Oh,
Yes,
he
you
never goes to
do.
sleep.
I never go to sleep when you ask me to.
Yes, you do, sweetie.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
No, it's just recently you've decided that you're going to be defiant. It's a
Oh
bit-
no.
I know sleep is not your favorite thing to do. I do know that. But you do go to sleep when it's bedtime. We're going to talk. We're going to have a conversation later. Not tonight because he's going to have to go to sleep. See, Identity 4 says, Kai, you should enjoy sleep while you can. Once you get to be an adult, you don't get enough. Yeah.
Truth.
Catch up on that sleep now.
I know we've already started the bargaining of like, I'll take her out now if you feed her in an hour.
Hmm. Exactly. But don't you like with the dog, your partner goes to work at night. So
Correct. Yes.
you have nighttime duty.
Correct.
And-
So I have to
and
do
by
the
duty,
early
I mean
mornings.
Duty.
Duty,
not
duty. Yes.
Duty.
So on
duty.
the mornings when he's at work, I have to do all the things. But those are usually mornings when I also work, so it's not a big deal. When we both are on the weekend, then we can bargain and trade.
Yeah.
So I was able to sleep till almost 10 o'clock today, which was insane. I haven't done that since we got her.
Wait, are you on holiday already?
I took this whole week off.
What? Yes. Wow.
Because I have 240 hours of PTO.
Wow. That's awesome.
So I took some.
You should.
So originally we were
Yes.
going to go somewhere for the week, but then we got a puppy. So
Mhm.
so we are finding all sorts of fun things to do with our days. So today we went to a matinee.
Mm.
Yesterday we went on a big long hike. It was her very first hike
Yeah.
ever.
A staycation.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of very fun things. So yeah, that's gonna be great.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So this morning I slept in. Tomorrow I'm gonna let him sleep in. Great.
So Noodles is wondering if there's going to be a New Year's hangover show.
No.
No.
No. Grr.
No.
Grr.
Yeah, no, we decided that the timing of everything that week there will be no show. We will but we do want to do a decade in review show. So we are going to fit that in, record it probably live using StreamYard at some point. I was hoping Justin would come back. I think he did pass out, even though he hasn't come back. But I've been thinking about, maybe the 23rd. I was hoping we could schedule that tonight. I think Justin went to bed because he's been awake for hours.
Speaking only for myself,
Mhm.
I have to work that day.
I do too.
So it would be great to do the exact same thing we did tonight, basically.
So later.
To log in at like 7:30, go over what we're gonna do, and then do an 8 o'clock show. It can be short. I think it could be definitely shorter if we
Mhm.
wanted. I don't think we have to talk for almost 2 hours about that. But that's I could get away with earlier if I need to, but it would be better for me since I don't get off until it's during zoo camp, so probably 5:30.
Mhm.
Then I'd be able to eat dinner before the show.
Okay, I mean, I don't have anything going on that evening, so that would be fine.
But if it needs to be earlier, it can. I can make it work. Just let
Could
me
we
know.
do like instead of a I mean, Justin did a whole bunch of numbers and everything. I'm going to see
Yeah,
if
I saw
can.
that.
I need to talk with him about after he's had some sleep about what his numbers mean.
I know. I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, I think I know what this means. But then there's this stuff. What does this mean?
Yeah.
There were sections that I was like, oh, I totally get what he did here. And then there were sections where I was like, how'd you get this number?
Yeah, and then I need to look more closely. Like he was saying that he put synthetic biology into evolution, and I'm like, nope, no,
Yeah.
those are no.
Yeah.
I'm gonna split those apart. So there's some reformatting that might need to be done. But anyway, yeah, decade in review show, and it's cool that Justin that I want to do that. I can't wait, and I think later, if we could do a 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I could probably do that. I think I
Maybe.
could get that done. I can manage
I just
it.
would like to, maybe not be up as late. And I'm sure our East Coast friends would appreciate it as well.
Yeah, it's the holidays. I get it.
It's the
I think we could
holidays.
do it. I think that'd be fine.
And then
Does that mean we were trying to log on at 6:30 to talk through things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would that be possible, or do you think
I think
7 o'clock?
if you don't mind me eating while we're doing that, while we're doing the prep,
No, not
then
at
I
all.
think
Yeah.
I think that's doable. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna put that on my calendar.
Okay.
I'll put it on the calendar. And yeah, because it would be nice not to. Yes. TWIS Decade in Review. So put it on there.
6:30 Great.
All right. Yeah, I think Justin's gone.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
He's like, forget you people. I'm
Oh,
exhausted.
he just left the chat too, so I think he timed out. So I think
I think
we are doing.
he passed out somewhere. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we've scheduled that Decade in Review show, and then I'll get it published at some point. But yeah, so everyone, if you're watching now, you're in the know. You're in the know. Oh, Ed, that's more than a decade ago. The first story on TWIS, I have that on tape. I'd have to listen to the tape to find out, probably. But yeah, I don't know what his first story on his first TWIS was. What year? That's 2005, so that's 15 years ago. Now, yeah. But the Decade in Review, I mean, that's we didn't have Blair for the first 3 years of the decade. No, what year did you start?
I started
2 years.
January 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first 2 years or 1 year. No, 2 years. Okay.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I had a Kai, and then I got a Blair.
Yeah. Almost immediately.
There's a period of 3 months in 2011 where I wasn't even on the show.
Yeah.
So I was like, the decade, oh my, it's a little bit of a blur.
Yes.
Yes. I was writing down from this year. I went through all of the episodes and I wrote down all of our interviews. We had 28 interviews in 2019.
Jeez. That's more shows with interviews than without.
Yep. And they are a wonderful, a bunch of really good interviews. I was looking at the list and I was like, what a good year of interviews. What are we going to do this year? What's 2020 going to bring? Hello, Janiscu. Welcome to the chat. I don't know how much longer we're going to be here.
Yeah.
I need to put my child to bed.
Moments.
Yes, a moment. A moment. All right. Yeah, Identity 4 is excited. 7 p.m. 23rd. 7 p.m. We're going to make it happen. And hopefully Justin will be able to make it to the Decade in Review show.
Sure, I'm going to check. I'm going to send out a group text.
Can you coordinate?
Yeah. Justin. We have decided.
Yes. This week in number puzzles. Exactly, Ben. What else? So the first show for 2020 is January 8th. We are not doing a show the week of January the 1st. I'm sorry. Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be nice to take some a little time off. It will be nice. So it's not going to be 2 whole weeks without a show. There will be a show, just not on the normal broadcast until the 8th, January 8th. And that's going to be our predictions show, which will be fun.
I was looking back at some of my predictions already. Oh, I have some Googling to do.
Oh, yes.
Every year I'm like, this year, I am going to keep track throughout the year.
Every year I say the same thing.
Yeah. No.
I need somebody to keep track for me.
Yeah.
Is what I need. Yeah, so the prediction show will be a lot of fun. And then the week after that is going to be in San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's really fast. Oh my
That's so
goodness.
soon.
Yes. And then it's like, what, 16th? And then. Let's see,
Oh,
what is that?
Justin responded to the text. Yours.
And then 1, 2, 3,
Okay, Justin confirmed the show. So
4. And then 4 weeks. And then we'll go to Seattle. And
Yeah.
we'll do a lot of fun in Seattle.
Oh yes, I meant to tell you that you have someone interested in being the tech help for that if you are so inclined.
Cool. Yes.
So we can talk about what that means and things.
Great.
Great.
Yes, please. We will all register. We will all register.
Perfect.
Oh, okay. Is there
Hurrah.
anything else we need to talk about before? We'll be back talking next Monday. So we have another chance to talk about things with people and chat about things. It's the holidays. We're almost to the solstice, which, like I said, I love. I hope everyone has just a fabulous week or so. And then more holidays. I really am looking. I want a vacation. I always want vacations.
Feels nice.
I'm really jealous, Blair. I'm like, how do you just take time off like that?
Well,
What?
I scheduled it roughly 8 months ago.
Yeah, good job.
So that's how. It's more like staring down the barrel at losing PTO that I earned
Yeah,
and going, okay, I'm scheduling some time.
good. Yeah. Don't lose it.
No.
Use it.
Yes.
Thunder Beaver, I have not heard. Oh, I have heard of Silver TV. Okay, it runs off Ethereum cryptocurrency payment. Interesting. Thanks for that. I don't know. More platforms. I have to figure out how to do what, where, when. Is there anything else? Yes, Ed is congratulating Finland for having more women in government. Yes, that's pretty. They made some great election choices. That'll be cool. And it's going to be a Twiscation for the TWIS holidays. It'll be great. It'll be good. No vacation. Oh, but you're going to Disney World. It's good. Long term. This is another thing, another messaging strategy. People are able to plan long time in advance for vacations, to save money, to buy a house. There are goals that people have that are like long time in the future. How can we get people thinking that way about things they can do today for the future of our climate? Right? It's like saving for a house or planning a vacation. You have to do things in advance, and you have a goal. So you do things that are specific to that goal in advance of it.
So one of the values that we talk about in Noki is responsible management, which is making simple, common sense steps for the future of all generations of people and animals. The idea that if you know there's a problem and you have tools to fix it, it makes sense to do that. Just kind of talking about hey, we have this problem, but we have tools at our disposal. So let's make some simple, common sense steps to fix those problems.
Yeah, I like it. Simple, common sense.
So
Interview
from Justin,
and AI.
Justin just sent a smiley face and then the scream face and then the sleepy face and said, I'm still in a different time zone and it's not even the one I just left.
What? So did he get stuck somewhere?
No,
Because I thought he was
just topsy-turvy.
Okay.
He said should be good by Monday. So he did confirm Monday. So we're good
Okay,
for
good.
Monday. So I'll send out some tweets tomorrow and stuff, letting everyone know.
I'm going to kick him out of the studio.
Yeah.
Kick
Kick
him out.
everybody out.
I kicked him out. Yep, I'm going to kick everybody out. He's
Kick us
lost
all
in
outta
time and
here.
space. That's right. Oh,
Get
my
out of
goodness.
here.
That's right. I know as soon as I hang up here, I'm going to remember things that I wanted to talk about and be like, oh, I had this opportunity to talk about things and I totally forgot because I didn't write it down and it was the end of the day and it's late and I don't know. So anyway, that'll just be how it is.
Yep. Just remember to bring me some calendars when you come to the Bay Area.
I can do that. I can bring some calendars to the Bay Area. And I would like somebody to bring me candy. That would be nice.
That can be arranged.
If you give me candy, I will give you calendars.
Perfect.
Yes, this is a good trade.
How about some fresh baked cookies?
I like cookies. Yes. I will eat the cookies. All of them. I want to eat the cookies.
There you go.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. So, cookies, calendars, maybe some candy. Identity's going to watch
A
Die
puppy.
Hard.
Yeah.
That's great. Sadie the puppy.
Mhm.
Oh, holidays, everyone. Hopefully, we'll see you on Monday.
Mhm.
We'll send some reminders out to everybody through social media, all the different channels about the Decade in Review show that will hopefully tide you over just a little bit for the holidays. Thank you so much for watching, for being with us tonight on whatever platform you are watching on. Thank you for being a part of the evening. Blair, thanks for great year.
Oh, thank you for a great year. Just keep getting better.
Great year of science.
Ugh.
Yes.
The 2010s, the decade in which I became a part of TWIS.
I know.
It's an important decade.
Oh, it's very important. Very important.
Yeah.
All right. How do we say goodnight? Good night, Blair.
Say goodnight.
Blair.
Say goodnight, Blair. Good night, Blair. Say goodnight, Kiki.
Good night, Kiki.
We can say goodnight, minions. Good night,
Good night, minions.
Bye.
We will see you next week. Bye. It's always double button pushing.